Okay, so why don't you take it away, Dan, and we'll hope for the best.
Okay, thank you. So again, Dan Bryant, Executive Director of Square One Villages, presented to this group once a few months ago when we first started working on this project to get some initial response to it. So just wanted to give folks an update. We are just about ready to close the purchase agreement we have with the church, or just in the final stages of negotiating who's going to pay for what and repairs to bring the building up to par, so that everything's in good repair. And the basic concept is to create a resident-owned co-op that will own the housing. We will operate as a community land trust that owns the property, that stewards it to make sure that the property is well cared for, and that the residents are abiding by all the policies and procedures for operating the co-op. And the basic idea behind this is this kind of style of housing enables people who are more on the low income side, but still, deserve a decent place to live, to build a little bit of equity, to improve their financial stability, and to provide then, a more solid, secure future in their housing needs. We just yesterday opened our first project developed on this model in Springfield. We had Congressman DeFazio out to the event to give him a tour. He was quite impressed and said he's going to take this concept back and talk to Maxine Waters, who chairs the House Committee in the House for the House, to talk about things that might be done with federal legislation to promote this concept and provide greater funding support, because that's been one of the challenges. It's neither rental nor home ownership. It's kind of a hybrid between rental and home ownership. And the housing, as you're going to see in just a little bit, high quality, very conventional in many ways, somewhat smaller. Our specialty has been building tiny homes, but for this project, we're looking to do not only tiny homes of single bedroom, but also 2-3 bedroom homes for more families. Um, and Yeah, just to provide something that people at what's called 60% of area median income. So depending on your household size, that can vary from $24,000 to $32,000 in annual income. But to give them a means by which they can have secure housing, not just now, but on into the future, that this is guaranteed to remain in perpetuity, affordable for people in that range. Um, and we have all kinds of mechanisms built in to make sure that it's well cared for and maintained and things of that nature. So I'll introduce Andy Heben, who's our project director, and he'll show you some images to give you a better idea of what this is going to look like, as we initially conceive of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, I just started with this first slide here that kind of gives a little visual to what Dan was talking about. The idea of a shared ownership structure, where a community land trust, such as Square One Villages, retains ownership of the land. And then the residents that live on the land in the houses, they form a housing cooperative that owns the houses. We wanted to share the updated plans with you. I don't think I was here last time, but previously we were only going to develop this front part of the site. We were going to partition the property. The church was going to keep this. Sorry, this is one of the parts of living by a train track. I've got a train going by right now. But initially we were going to partition the property right here and just develop this front half. Going through the zoning process with the city, that was going to require street connectivity standards, where we would have to make a connection back here between Ava and Quiet Lane, which was going to just create a lot of cost for the church. and we since moved forward. The church offered to sell us the entire property, which will allow us to put some more units on the site. And so that's what we've been working on since then. And the church will basically lease back use of some of the space from the church buildings a couple times a week, and they'll otherwise be used as common facilities to support the residents. So we have 70 units here on this front half between River Road here and the Peace Presbyterian Church here. 5 different floor plans ranging from around 300 square feet to some larger 2-bedroom units that are around 800 square feet, so that we can get a mix of different family types in this co-op. Some stacked 1-bedroom apartments along River Road here, with the idea of creating sort of a visual buffer and a sound buffer between River Road and the interior of the village, and then some kind of tiny attached homes throughout here, clustered around common open spaces. This is a site plan view. So with all of our projects, we like to kind of consolidate parking towards the perimeter of the site and create more of a walkable, pedestrian-oriented environment around the houses. And as you can see here, the church building's really set up well to, you know, with a 70-person co-op, you need a fair amount of common space, and they've got 9,000 square feet of existing buildings there that we plan to utilize a community kitchen and other flexible uses for the village to have events and meetings and things like that. Got a few floor plans. This is all up on our website if you want to take a closer look at squareonevillages.org/peace. So these are the tiny attached homes. And then these are the 2-story units along River Road there. I think I'll stop it there, and I'm happy to answer. I think Dan and I are happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
To be clear, the church will continue to function, that they will still operate, you know, their Sunday services and Bible studies and, you know, fellowship events of that nature. And so we'll have shared use of those buildings. And otherwise, yeah, we just want to make something that's going to be attractive, well built, and provide secure housing for people who don't have a lot of options in that price range. Speaking of which, Andy, you did not mention what the anticipated carrying charges are going to be.
Yeah, we're looking at, ultimately it'll depend on the financing, but our target is to serve to get it around $400 to $650 per month, depending on unit size.
So I have a couple of questions.
John, your hand's up?
Oh,
Yes.
gotta have her raise her hand. Okay.
I have 2 questions. Oh, maybe one's a comment. The question is about, I think originally, or maybe I misunderstood this, it was, I thought I heard that they would be 2 individual co-ops, that 35 units was kind of a upper limit on what would really work in terms of a group of people and how they could organize themselves efficiently. Is that still the case, or is it 1?
We're looking at doing a single co-op. Our previous plan was 36 units. But yeah, there's a lot of precedent out there of co-ops of all various sizes. There's plenty of co-ops with over 100 members. It's just organized a little bit differently. And they each have their pros and cons. We've looked into this quite a bit in terms of looking at other examples throughout the country. On a larger co-op, you do have a lot of economies of scales where you have, you know, with more units, you can leverage that to, you know, hire some property management services or things like that. Whereas like a smaller co-op, you might have more of a direct democracy where each person is maybe serves on the board of the co-op. Whereas in a larger co-op, you'd have say 7 folks elected to the board. And then there's a committee structure with like a house and grounds and administration and a membership committee that other people serve on.
I just wanted to make a comment that I grew up in a subsidized housing apartment complex in Burlington, Vermont, that was structured like this, with the houses clustered densely and the parking off to the side or the perimeter. And as a kid, it was really pretty wonderful. I mean, we ran in and out of each other's houses like a tribe, and it was just a really great community feel, and not to have to cross roads to visit friends was really special. And we rode our bikes everywhere. And this is smaller, but still, it was a great experience growing up in an environment like this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Joel?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Can we bring up that one view that shows the church? And yeah, that one. Now, I'm not familiar with this church, but if flexible use, community kitchen, office, bicycle, is that where all the church services are? Or it seems like where's the church?
This is actually the church here.
Oh, okay.
It's a round building. This is kind of a covered pavilion.
Gotcha.
You can actually kind of see it a little bit better here. This is kind of a covered area.
Okay.
I think will be kind of a really
here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is kind of their their fellowship hall, I believe they call it. They already have this, that's where they have their events. There's a kitchen in there. There's the offices and all that stuff. The only thing that isn't there currently is that we plan on adding is the laundry and the bicycle storage, and that's just so we don't have to build extra buildings.
Sure. No, it looks good. The other question I had is there, I believe, is a price of property next to this that's up for sale. Are you guys thinking about that, or is that just going to end up going to whatever comes in there? And I don't even know what it's zoned for.
I think we're already, building 70 units here. This is
that's quite a
biggest project so far. So I think we're taking it one bite at a time. I know there was somebody that had a purchase agreement on that, and they had a subdivision kind of designed out, but it looks like it fell through and it's on sale. So my guess is some sort of single family subdivision is going to end up there.
Okay.
Jerry Finnegan and then Judy.
Okay, why it looks like there's parking along the outside of the development, and that's what I was going to ask about, but I see that there is some there. And I was wondering about families. Are these kind of like 2-bedroom things for families, or 3-bedroom? How's that?
Yeah, many of them are designed for smaller households. With these smaller attached tiny homes, we have, these are kind of like a studio with a sleeping loft above. So this is the ground floor view, and this is the upstairs view. And then we also have these larger units with a bedroom here on the ground floor, and also a larger loft on the upper floor. These other units are kind of 1-bedroom units, and we don't yet have a schematic yet, but these purple buildings here, they're a similar footprint as this, except they're 1 unit all the way up. So there'll be 2 bedrooms upstairs with a kitchen and a bathroom and a family room downstairs, which we think will be better for a little bit larger family.
Okay, and the other question I have is, Judy, I'm taking minutes, so I need to know your last name, and all I have it right now is Judy.
Judy, it's your turn anyway.
Okay, it's Gatson, Gatson. Same last name as usual.
I didn't recognize the spelling. Okay.
All right. So my first question, I have 2 kind of smaller ones and one maybe more involved. The first one is about the Conestoga huts in the back, and I apologize, I started a little late. I don't know if that was addressed, but there's currently Conestoga huts there with residents. Is that still going to be a part of all of this? Is to still have those Conestoga huts, or are they going to have, maybe first access to get one of these dwellings?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are Conestoga huts kind of in this area right now. I think that's something we would have to ask. I'm not sure whether or not they would be able to stay. I know you can only host one Conestoga hut or RV under the city's overnight sleeping program on residential property. Currently it's church property, so I believe we have like 6 of them there. So I don't know the answer to that question.
So
Do you have
Andy,
anything to add to that, Dan?
yeah, I just think that it's probably not suitable for a construction environment. That I think most likely we would look to relocate those folk to another location. Just
Yeah.
because I don't know. Other than it might be advantageous to have someone just to keep eyes on the property to avoid stolen stuff. For that reason, but we'd have to look carefully at that if it's compatible use. As to whether or not they would would have first dibs, I mean, they would have to go through the same process as anyone else in terms of applying, and certainly if they qualify, yeah, it might be a good thing that they could move out into a Conestoga into their own home. Better yet, if they could even be involved in some of the building, painting or things that lower skilled people could do. That's an idea we've kind of kicked around with another project of whether or not we could make it kind of a job training project as well for people who are living on the site to learn some skills that could help them then in the job market. But the current folk that are there, weren't chosen for that, so it would just depend on whether or not they had sufficient income and otherwise would qualify for the project.
Okay.
We did just have one of those residents, interestingly though, move to our C Street co-op. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
Nice. Okay. And the second question I have for this is, I'm super excited about this. It's so nice to see this in our neighborhood and to see this coming along. The last time, we got some of this in a meeting, we didn't have all of these layouts and everything, so it's so exciting to see the next step of it. So I'm thrilled about it. Now I have kind of lots of friends that live in the same neighborhood, and I've shared with them that this is coming, and some are also enthusiastic, but some are not quite as enthusiastic. And I try to have conversations with them, and I try to inform them about it. And I wondered if on your website, and I did take a look on there because I saw it was posted, are there talking points about the benefits to the community, or kind of what good things can come out of it? Because there's concerns that I don't know that they're necessarily founded, and I'd like to start doing my part to have that conversation with people that I know that would have those hesitations that live in our neighborhood, so that we can kind of make sure the neighborhood is more supportive of this, and that I would like to have some talking points or just some pointers on what to say. I do my best, but I'm sure that there's maybe better information.
It's a good idea. And I can just say personally, I live in a neighborhood, I live on a dead-end street that had 5 houses. It's in a building phase right now, and they've added about 25 houses on this street, and there's still another dozen or so. And so, I can relate. It's a big change anytime you have this kind of influx in a neighborhood, but it's also in accordance with the city's goals in terms of infill and density, and particularly along a corridor like this is, where you want to have this kind of housing, and there's good access to public transportation. So, we want to encourage folks as much as possible to use that. I have my own personal fantasy. I don't know if it worked, but if someone knows Mark Frohnmeyer at Archimoto, to set up some kind of car sharing arrangement that the co-op could use electric cars and share that to cut down on personal car use as part of it. But that might be stretching the goals of this one particular project. But still, I totally get where anyone would have concerns, and we just want to assure folks that we're going to do everything that we can to make it a high quality project, and that all folk are vetted in the process, so that we make our best attempt to get people who are going to be good neighbors.
Mary
Okay, thank you.
Leon?
Yeah, is any preference being given to people who are from Santa Clara? And is there?
I think that's a great idea. When we did Emerald Village, Eugene, we absolutely did that. In our conversations with the Whitaker neighborhood, uh, because of some of these concerns, that idea came up and said, well, what if we gave preference to people from this neighborhood? Yeah. We have to be careful in terms of fair housing law, that you just have to do things in accordance with that. But yeah, I think people that already live in the neighborhood who are underhoused or who want to live in this kind of style of housing, want to be in a co-op, yeah, definitely an idea that we should explore.
I'm gonna put myself in the queue before Dawn and Jerry get a second go round. So one thing I wanted to ask was about River Road street side. What's the view? All the pictures you show us are from the inside, and I'm curious what it looks like from the pedestrians that are using the bus stop out there. And
Yeah, that's a great question, and we haven't designed that side yet. We just have these kind of rough schematics, and we're in the process of going from the schematic phase to our more detailed drawings. We're working with Dylan Lamar at Cultivate. He designed our C Street project, and that's definitely one of the things that we're going to be looking at. The city has a lot of zoning requirements that we're not going to just build a blank wall back there. They require a certain amount of windows and undulations and things like that. But in doing our site planning, meetings, there's pretty broad consensus of facing these inward rather than outward, and in terms of kind of creating more of a community feel. The zoning code does want you to face them this way, but we felt just because it's such a busy and noisy street, we felt it would be nice to face them inwards. And the city also has landscape standards around here, so I think ideally we would want to create some sort of like landscape buffer between the buildings and the street as well.
Great. And then I don't see any kind of playground or garden space, so I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, these darker green rectangles are intended to be raised beds, and this is intended to be a little playground here. But we also like to keep those kind of details a little bit flexible and wait till we select our residents and kind of plan our common spaces around their needs and interests.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last thing I had was when you talked about having collaborative work of some kind, Dan, it occurs to me North Eugene High School has a program where they do building sheds and other things like that. It might be worth connecting with them because their students could get some on-the-job training and you could get some free help.
Already on it, there's a group that's been working on similar concepts with all of the schools in the area. Yeah, we're having conversations and might get a pilot project launched before the end of this school year, with a goal of making a major focus in the fall of 22. So yeah, and I don't I can only assume that someone from North Eugene is a part of that group. I'll have to check on that and make sure, but there is a group working on it.
Do you know the name of that group, Dan? I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah. I'll have to look it up. In fact, John Stapleton, Andy, is one of the leaders in that group, and just sent me an email about it. So we'll converse on that. So,
okay.
Jerry Finnegan, then Dawn Leslie.
Kate, you already asked my question. I was wondering about the street view, so that's already been answered. So thank you.
All right.
My next question actually kind of piggybacked off of Judy's question, which talked about talking to neighbors and messaging. And I was reminded, Kate, of when you and I went around that neighborhood talking to neighbors about the Conestoga huts coming in. And I guess I would ask, Dan, are you aware of, have there been any problems or issues with the Conestoga huts? Did that?
Not so much with the Conestoga huts that I know of. We've had issues with a couple of other people who've set up tents on the property. Which we have addressed as soon as we became aware of it. and made sure that they moved their tents off the property. We had a really unfortunate encounter between our staff member and someone who identified himself as a neighbor, who got quite nasty with our staff member, cussed him out and so forth. And we can't figure why, because our staff member was there to remove the person in the tent. And I think he might have been confused that he was the person in the tent or something. But at any rate, so that's been the biggest issue of just other people trying to take advantage of the property and filling a vacant spot. So I feel like we've done a pretty good job of staying on top of that. We always want to hear, if we haven't, to make sure that we are. And otherwise, I think, as far as I know, some of I've heard some good things from the church folk of the interactions they've had with the Conestoga residents and things they are doing. I mean, they have worked really hard to clean out all the blackberries in there that was behind, and and did that all on their own. It wasn't that somebody asked them to; they just took that on their own to improve the property. And we have a couple of people with green thumbs that they're just growing all kinds of things there, and tried to do things in that way. We had a broken pipe on church property that one of our residents broke the pipe, and then immediately late at night set about fixing it, and to stop the water, and repaired it without asking anyone. Just did it themselves. And so that's the kind of folk, that they're trying to take responsibility, and do their share. Doesn't mean everybody's perfect, but they're working on it.
Thank you.
I have one more question. What about stormwater?
Stormwater, that's that's a good question. That's something that we'll get into as we move into design development. We're working with KPFF on the civil plans and Satur Group on the landscape plan. So all the stormwater will be managed on site per city code, but I'm not positive exactly how or where we're going to do it yet.
Oh, okay.
Looks like from our geotech report, it seems like we have pretty good drainage, good soils, so we're not too concerned about it.
Okay. Any other questions, folks?
Really exciting.
Oh, I do.
How far out are you required to notice for a residential subdivision? Like, what is it, a 200-foot radius? Is it a?
Oh, I know that, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But this because this is all one lot and not a residential subdivision, it's permitted outright by zoning code. The only land use process we'll really have to go through is a few adjustment reviews where we're doing things, like I said, of facing the buildings inward rather than towards the street. And we feel like we have pretty good reasoning for doing those things. And do you know that? Sounds like you might know the distance, Dan.
Well, I was thinking when the notification we gave for our Roosevelt project was,
I want to say
500.
300. Is it 500?
Yeah,
300, 500.
It's at least 3, but it might be 5.
3 to 500.
Yeah.
But because it's not a subdivision, you're assuming that you don't have to notice. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, just because of the zoning of the site, it's residential, low density residential, and this is actually permitted outright by the zoning code, so it doesn't require any sort of extra process if we were going to change the zone or do something outside of what the existing zoning required.
So I'm not, I'm definitely a proponent. I just want to be sure that as a community, if you're not required to notice anybody who's adjacent, I still think there needs to be a process to talk to people, and I want to know what that looks like and how thorough is it, or how far reaching, or.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're here today, to show you guys our plans and to get feedback before we move forward. And we'd be happy to do so as we get closer to construction, do maybe a larger meeting. What do you think, Dan?
Oh, absolutely. So the next step is we need to do the same presentation for the church. We gave them a very preliminary one, as we did you, and we want them to have good involvement in this process. And then I think, yeah, and it'd be nice if we could do it on site for the community. You know, that's the other thing. I've kind of been holding back, thinking that this pandemic was going to come to an end. But if that doesn't happen, yeah, we'll have to do something, arrange something by Zoom again. But I would very much love to do that. Invite in the neighborhood to come and take a look and have conversation with anybody in the neighborhood.
Okay, Joel, you're next.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I may have missed it. What's your projected timeline for this getting completed?
A lot will depend on getting the funding. So we have close to $3 million in hand already, but it's about a $9 million project or better. So we're going to be going to Oregon Housing and Community Services, so what's called the LIFT Home Ownership Program, and seeking 3.3 million from that. That will happen in the spring, and if we get a green light from that, then it's conceivable that by the fall of 22 we could be breaking ground. If not, then we may have to be creative and figure out some other way to do it and break it up into smaller chunks.
I see. Okay.
Of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Judy.
Yeah, this one's just out of curiosity. It's not, I don't think, too pertinent right now, given that timeline of starting. But that property that's just south of this, behind it, there is a path that cuts. I don't know if it cuts through that property, but people use it all the time. It's quite worn. People go through to that through that property all the time to access this, to come out through that church. Is that a path that is going to be retained? Is that, because it's used quite a bit, and will it be fenced off more clearly so that use doesn't continue?
Yeah, we're very aware of that, and certainly going through the parking lot, I don't think is any problem. I think the issue we'll have to think about is going along that fire lane. The two lanes, might be a natural path through there. It's a question of how will the residents of this project feel about that, if that's a path that a lot of people are doing, or should we create a pathway along the perimeter behind those houses on the bottom, along the property line, or something else. But that's a really good question, and I think that's something we're going to have to explore. I know at Emerald Village, our project there, just because there was a lot of curiosity, they got a lot of traffic from people coming to look at their homes, and they eventually put up some no trespassing sign because it just felt like a little bit of a privacy violation of just people walking through just to take a look. So yeah,
I also think that other property is going to get developed in the not too distant future as well. And once that happens, it seems like it's used as sort of a informal dog park at the moment from the times I've been there. But I think once both sites get developed, I don't know if that will be as much of a cut through, but that's just my guess.
But along the western, through the parking lot, I don't think there's any problem with people continuing to use that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Dan or Angie? All right. Well, thanks very much, and we look forward to hearing back from you as you get closer to breaking ground.
Yeah, well, thank you for this opportunity, and feel free to contact Andy and I through our website. I'll be glad to respond to any other questions people may have as we go.
Thanks a million.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the feedback.